Come, sit in the chair that will kill your back, followed by the rest of you.
Shiver at the tomb of a 14th century warlord who still adds victims to his body count.
Shudder at the haunted wine cabinet that requires a signed waiver to view.
All this plus more to amuse, tickle, and terrify.
It's creepy.
It's cursed.
It's this week's fearless swig of Odd Tonic.
Welcome to the parlor. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Maxwell. Have a seat, dear guest. And please mind the stacks of paraphernalia and materials.
The parlor is undergoing a bit of a rearrangement at the moment.
Yes, you could call it that. I'm not sure how we got here. It began as a quick reshuffling of the corner, and it's become
a viable option to set it all on fire, quietly leave one by one in the middle of the night and start over.
My love exaggerates, but only just. And it was the refreshing of the parlor that became the impetus for this evening's show.
The curio cabinet. We've cleared an entire shelf and we can't decide what to display in it.
There was a bit of back and forth over what could fill the shelf, which led to dear Jennifer's stock and oft-repeated punchline.
Obviously cursed objects.
You know, at this point, I imagine a little trademark symbol resting at the end of that sentence every time I hear it.
Well, it was my band name in college.
You know, I have never thought to ask, what are you imagining when you think of your famous, obviously cursed objects?
Oh, I think, the standard shriveled monkey's paw, the wooden puzzle box covered in bloody fingerprints, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That would be an amazing art installation.
See? It's a fabulous idea. And now we have the space.
Yeah.
Curses.
Maybe we should just quickly clarify. The parlor houses many wonderful donations from friends. However, and let us put a fine point on this, we do not want your cursed items. They are strictly prohibited.
However, we do love cursed stories.
Right. And as the topic of cursed objects has rekindled in the parlor, it is the topic of this week's Odd Tonic.
We've gathered together some of our favorite stories, and hopefully some of them will be new favorites of yours.
Well, shall we wander into the world of the cursed and ill-fated, my love?
Ooh, with you? I love wandering into places I shouldn't.
Cursed objects. Authentic tokens of doom for those who dare disturb them. Campfire fictions told to send shivers. Or a genius device passed down from the ancients to keep people from touching your stuff. Whichever you believe, tales of cursed tombs, furniture, jewelry, and more have been with us since cuneiform was first pressed into clay. Should you ever discover one of these sinister items, and there isn't a creepy old man with a wandering eye waiting there to tell you the tale of the curse before you, let us establish their governing rule set. This knowledge may save you a lot of agony, a loss of fortune and or limbs, and possible funeral expenses. Step 1. Look for an ominous inscription. A caution to the caution, however, as one never knows if the words are a magical incantation to raise an indomitable skeleton army, it's best to read silently to yourself. To illustrate this point, let us travel to Sweden. Imagine, if you will.
You enter a forest glade near Ronneby, Sweden. A soft breeze dances across the field, drawing your eye to 3 very tall and oddly shaped stones. Thoroughly out of place in this grassy clearing, the stones give the impression they've been there a very long time. And they have. 14 centuries, to be exact. 2 of the stones flank and protect the third, which is inscribed with Elder Futhark runes, the oldest form of the runic alphabet, predating even Old Norse. This is the Björketorp Runestone, one of the tallest in the world at nearly 14 feet tall, and its inscription has been terrifying people since 7 AD. On one side, it has the words, prophecy of destruction. It'd be funny if it read, see prophecy on the other side. On the other side, it reads,
see prophecy on the other side.
That's the curse. You're just running and running around the rock.
Round and round forever.
I, master of the runes, conceal here runes of power. Incessantly plagued by maleficence, doomed to insidious death is he who breaks this monument. Many scholars disagree on the purpose of the Björketorp Runestone, though most theories indicate it's some form of marker or shrine. Some have suggested it's an ancient border marker between the Swedes and the Danes. It has also been thought to have been a fertility shrine or a shrine honoring the Norse god Odin. Another theory is that the monolith was a burial marker, either for a real grave or as a memorial, which necessitated the use of the prophetic warning to prevent the stone's removal. However, archaeological investigation of the area conducted in 1914 did not reveal the presence of any human remains, at least not around the stone. Directly underneath was left unexamined due to not wanting to disturb the runestone. According to legend, the last person to scoff at the runestone's warning was a man in the 15th century. He wanted to remove the stone to clear the field for perhaps livestock, or scenic urban 4-story condos with retail space in the lower level. His plan was to remove the stone by heating it up with fire and then pouring cold water over it to crack it into smaller transportable pieces. Unfortunately for the man, a strong wind kicked up on a breezeless day, and his fire accidentally set his hair ablaze, and then his clothes, and then he died, probably screaming. Which is really the most least insidious death possible, right?
Right.
I'm imagining the rock just falling flat on him and then rising back up. Murder rock. However, the fire that threatened to consume the runestone extinguished itself. Coincidence? Merely a cautionary tale? That's up for you to decide, my dear guest. Though, it does bring us to the second and final step when dealing with the standard curse narrative. Don't dismiss the inscription or the history of the curse as a load of dingo's kidneys and proceed anyway. That's it. 2 rules. And yet, over the many millennia, people still can't get it right. Unfortunately, sometimes the debt was more costly than a beard of fire.
Turkic warlord Timur, from what is modern Uzbekistan, was one of the world's most ruthless invaders in the history of mankind. In 1369, he launched a war campaign to make the Mongol Empire as large as it had been during Genghis Khan's reign. In the end, his empire had spread through Central Asia, Russia, Eastern Turkey, Iraq, Kuwait, Syria, Pakistan, and India, to name a few. Timur was, to put it lightly, a psychopath, and his armies were famed for their cruelty. Merchants were disemboweled and diligently searched for gold under Timur's supervision. He ordered all those who dwelled in the cities he conquered beheaded. He ordered walls and roads built from the skulls, and in Persia, pyramids were built from somewhere between 70,000 to 100,000 skulls. He supervised these projects himself, and he personally prepared the poisons that were forced on all his adversaries and opponents. In all, he was responsible for the deaths of 17 million people.
Wow, the guy had drive.
The kid had moxie.
I admire his spunk.
Fast forward to Russia, 1941. At this time, one of the USSR's leading anthropologists was famous for reconstructing faces from skulls. Stalin wanted more of that action, so the Soviets scrambled to find a famous skull onto which to apply putty. Who did they choose? That's right. It was decided that Timur's skull seemed like pretty good publicity for the nation's scientific and archaeological projects. The Soviet anthropologist and archaeologist crew trekked to Uzbekistan and discovered that Timur was a terror in death as much as in life. Local legend claimed the tomb was cursed and brought misery to those who disturbed it. Perhaps there was some merit to this. It is said When the team reached the tombstone, it was split in two and carried an inscribed warning from Timur himself. "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." Interestingly, in the early 1700s, Timur's tomb had been previously opened by command of Persian commander Nadir Shah, who idolized the Turkic conqueror. Timur's tombstone was brought to his palace, and Nadir used the slab as a footing for his throne. After that, an earthquake rocked Iran, and the Shah himself was overcome by terrible illness that eventually descended into a violent madness equal only to Timur. Nadir Shah decided to put the tombstone back into place, and while being transported, it had been broken.
Do you save the receipt?
Ultimately, the Soviet archaeologists decided to ignore the warning. Reports go on to say that, during the excavation, several strange things happened. For instance, the hoisting gear, which was used to lift up the gravestones of Timur's sarcophagus, suddenly stopped working, and the lights went out. Then an additional inscription was discovered inside Timur's casket. "Whoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." 3 days after the exhumation, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in a surprise attack. All in all, Germany's invasion resulted in the death of 7.5 million Russians. The legend concludes that, after a few months, Stalin started to believe in the Timur curse and ordered his remains to be returned to the tomb and done with full Islamic burial rites. The body was returned in December of 1942. Nearly a month later, Stalin won the Battle of Stalingrad, and the Nazis, who had underestimated Russia's brutal winter, surrendered. Coincidentally, Timur himself was ultimately defeated and died during his army's ill-advised wintertime invasion of China, laid to waste by exposure. I love this story for its fascinating series of grim coincidences. Logically, however, Germany had planned and prepped their attack for months against Russia before the tomb was opened, so it's a little hard to swallow that when regarding this curse. Unless you want to consider retrocausality.
Ah, yes, exactly. The theory that the tomb was already open in the future.
Right.
If you consider all time, it's already happened. Retrocausality suggests the future affects its past and its present, as if the event reverberates through time.
It's a great theory.
Well, at the very least, I now have ideas as to what I'm going to put on my tombstone.
The dismissal of a curse's clear and simple instruction continues, and to new heights, as we bring you the story of
the Busby Stoop Chair. In 1702, a man named Daniel Oddie moved to a town called Kirby Wisk near North Yorkshire, England. The quiet little town was perfect to set up his workshop and business, and Daniel was in the business of coin forgery. He purchased an old farm for him and his grown daughter Elizabeth to live, where he sneakily built a large underground room to do his illegal work in secret. He even installed a robust locking mechanism so no one could catch him at his work. A local man in town, Thomas Busby, fell in love with Daniel's daughter Elizabeth, and the two were married. This did not particularly please Daniel, but there was Busby as his son-in-law. Being in the family, Busby soon became Daniel's partner in the counterfeiting game. But this partnership was strained and volatile. Busby was a drunk and had a temper to boot. Busby and Elizabeth took up lodging in a local inn a few miles from the farm. With ale and stronger drink readily available at the inn, Busby's drinking became worse. Daniel had had enough. One fine day, the counterfeiter arrived at the inn, ready to drag his daughter home and cut Busby out of the business. He found Elizabeth alone, and she refused to budge until her husband returned home. Father and daughter sat in the inn and waited. A very inebriated Busby finally arrived, and the two men immediately broke into a heated argument of huge proportions. The argument went something like this.
"I've had enough, Busby. I'm right chuffed."
How dare you? Get out.
You're nothing but trouble, Busby. I knew this from the very beginning. I want you out.
I want you out, you disrespectful worm of a man.
I'm taking Elizabeth with me.
What does Elizabeth have anything to do with this? I just want you out.
You can't kick me out. It's my business.
Business? Who cares about business? You're in my chair, and no one sits in my chair.
Daniel had been arguing to get the drunkard Busby out of his and Elizabeth's life, and Busby was just mad someone was sitting in his favorite chair. Daniel eventually left the inn and returned home without Elizabeth. Busby was fuming and still not satisfied. Sometime during the night, he made the 3-mile trek up to the farm and bludgeoned Daniel to death with one of the counterfeiting hammers he used to make coins. Killed with his own counterfeiting hammer. His work literally killed him. I wonder if the hammers had coin stamps on them or something. Was he found with a coin stamp on his forehead?
So macabre.
I don't want to know. I really don't. When Daniel Oddie failed to be seen again, a search was mounted, which led to the discovery of his body in the nearby woodlands. The murder was quickly traced back to Busby. He was charged, trialed, and found guilty of murder. Busby's last meal was requested to be at the inn, where he desired a drink of ale at his favorite pub in his favorite chair. On the way to the gallows, it is said that Busby screamed at the crowd, "May sudden death come to anyone who dare sit in my favorite chair." Busby was hanged. Afterwards, to perhaps discourage the locals from committing future crimes, Busby was cut down, dipped in pitch, and hanged by chains for display from a makeshift gibbet. The gibbet stood opposite the inn at the crossroads that led to the town of Thirsk. Maybe not all the witnesses paid heed to Busby's warning, but one person was listening. The owner of the inn, a known money spinner, renamed his establishment the Busby Stoop Inn. The owner greeted all who entered his inn with the tale of Busby's curse while gesturing over to the chair in dramatic fashion. There the chair remained, still lurking in place, still waiting for its former owner. A grisly murder, a morbid execution, and a cursed chair. It proved to be quite the attraction. Many people came to see it, and we are all still talking about it to this day. Some people claim to see the ghost of Busby himself visiting the inn in his afterlife. One landlady claimed, "I saw a figure on the landing upstairs. It was a very tall, human-like figure with no arms and no clear face. It moved sideways and then disappeared into the wall." But what about the chair? Was it cursed? They say the chair took the lives of a great many people who dared to sit in it. Some counts place the number at 63 deaths. The first recorded victim of the curse was a roof worker who had used Busby's chair, being it was the only available seat in the crowded inn. It was the first time in decades the chair had been used, so perhaps word of the curse had faded. Several minutes after finishing his break and returning to work, the unfortunate man fell off the roof and to his death. This kicked off a string of laborers whose lives were claimed by the chair. One had a roof collapse underneath him while he fell to his death. 2 other bricklayers dared each other to sit in the chair. One took the dare, and upon returning to work, fell to his death onto the concrete below. During World War II, numerous Air Force officers bravely accepted dares to try the seat, never to return home from the war. Certainly there were a lot of casualties associated with war, but sometime in 1967, a pair of Royal Air Force pilots also dared to have a seat, and later that night lost control of their car and crashed into a tree, dying instantly. One story tells of a driver who was there to pick up an airman. The airman asked to first go to the bathroom before his trip back to base. While waiting, the driver sat in the chair. When the airman took a long amount of time, it didn't seem like he would ever return. The driver left without him. The angered airman was forced to make his own way back to base. Upon his arrival, the airman grabbed a brick and hit the driver in the head with it, killing him. Through the early 1970s, the chair claimed a number of victims. Several cyclists and motorcyclists suffered fatal road accidents. A hitchhiker who, having spent 2 nights at the pub, was run over, and a local man died of a heart attack shortly after sitting in the chair. A cleaning lady was diagnosed with a brain tumor after she merely knocked into the chair. In addition to the curse of death, it is said that a person who sat in the chair will experience assorted terrors before dying, including extreme itching, hearing things, confusion, items being moved, and written warnings on mirrors and walls that promise the person's imminent death.
Yikes.
Strangest of all was the chimney sweep who sat in the chair one evening in 1894 when he got quite drunk. He left late into the night, but did not get far. It is said he laid down on the roadside to sleep off his drinking. The next morning, his body was found hanging from the mock Busby gibbet located next to the inn. Eventually, the inn owner moved it into the cellar, hoping that no one would have the chance to sit in it again. However, one day a delivery man happened to be in the basement and used the chair for a quick rest. He informed the owner that the chair was quite comfortable and it was a shame to keep it down there in the damp cellar. An hour later, his delivery truck inexplicably veered off the road and he was killed instantly. After that death, the owner had had enough. In 1978, he asked a local museum to take the chair, asking that the museum promise they would not allow anyone to ever sit in it. To ensure this, they hung the chair 5 feet off the ground, near the ceiling, and there it remains. Busby's chair resides in the Thirsk Museum in North Yorkshire, England, with no one sitting in it for the past 40 years. Visitors now dare each other to touch it, but no one can sit in it. In 2004, a Japanese film crew got very upset when refused permission to sit in the chair. They complained to the head of legal services at the county hall, inquiring what penalty they would incur if they disobeyed the museum's rules. They were told the penalty is death for sitting in the chair. The Busby Stoop Inn forever closed its doors in 2012.
2 simple rules, people. A lot of death could have been potentially spared by following 2 simple rules.
But there's also the ancillary part of the second rule, which is don't invite others to disregard a curse with, or more importantly, without their knowledge. A fine illustration of this is rendered in our next story, that of the infamous
Dibbuk Box. The Curse of the Dibbuk Box is a tale that has reached almost urban legend status ever since it was purchased by antique collector and small business owner Kevin Mannis. Mannis attended an estate sale in Oregon where he laid eyes on a small antique wine cabinet. The estate sale clerk told him that the cabinet had been owned by a 103-year-old woman, the only member of her family to survive the Holocaust in World War II. After fleeing to Spain, she had acquired the box there. It was one of only 3 items that she brought with her when she immigrated to the United States. The other 2 items were a steamer trunk and a sewing box. He purchased the wine cabinet, the sewing box, and other furniture at the estate sale. Kevin tells the tale in his own words. After the sale, I was approached by the woman's granddaughter, who said, "I see you got the Dibbuk box." She was referring to the wine cabinet. I asked her what a Dibbuk box was, and she told me that when she was growing up, her grandmother always kept the wine cabinet in her sewing room. It was always shut and set in a place that was out of reach. The grandmother always called it the Dibbuk box. When the girl asked her grandmother what was inside, her grandmother spit 3 times through her fingers, said, "A Dibbuk and a Castellum." The grandmother went on to tell the girl that the wine cabinet was never, ever to be opened. The granddaughter told me that her grandmother had asked that the box be buried with her. However, as such a request was contrary to the rules of an Orthodox Jewish burial, the grandmother's request had not been honored. I asked the granddaughter what a Dibbuk and a Castellum were, but she did not know. I asked her if she'd like to open it with me. She did not want to open it, as her grandmother had been very emphatic and serious when she instructed her not to do so, and, regardless of the reason, she wanted to honor her grandmother's request. I finally ended up offering her to let her keep what seemed to me to be a sentimental keepsake. At that point, she was very insistent and said, No, you bought it." I explained that I didn't want my money back and that it would make me feel better just to do what I thought was an act of kindness. She then became somewhat upset. Looking back on it now, the way she became upset was just plain odd. She raised her voice to me and said, "You bought it. You made the deal."
Always a good sign.
When I tried to speak, she yelled, "We don't want it." She began to cry and asked me to leave and quickly walked away. I wrote the whole episode off to the stress and grief she must have been experiencing. I took my purchases and politely left. Dear Jennifer, I feel like there should have been a little more of a takeaway on Kevin Manus's part in that particular exchange.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Okay.
Thinking he would restore it, Kevin then took the item to his business, a small furniture refinishing shop, and put it in the basement. He opened the cabinet and found that it contained
peanut brittle.
Haunted peanut brittle. No. It contained an eclectic mix of odd items, including a wine goblet, a small granite slab with the Hebrew word shalom etched into it, a dried rosebud, a candlestick, 2 pennies from the 1920s, and, strangest of all, 2 locks of human hair bound by cords. The very same day, strange things began to happen. When he left the shop on an errand, he received a frantic call from his employee, a salesperson at his shop. Hysterical, she said that someone was in the shop, swearing and smashing things. Plus, the intruder had locked the iron security gates and the emergency exit, and she couldn't get out.
Oh, scary.
During the call, his phone battery died. Kevin raced back to his shop and indeed found the gates locked. Getting inside, he found his employee on the floor in a corner, sobbing. He ran down the basement stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, he was hit by an overpowering and unexplainable odor of cat urine. The lights didn't work because all the light bulbs in the basement were broken. 9 incandescent bulbs were broken in their sockets, and 10 4-foot fluorescent tubes were lying shattered on the floor. No intruder was found, and it was impossible for anyone to leave the basement without being seen. Kevin returned upstairs, but his salesperson had left, never to return to work after having been with him for 2 years. She refused to ever discuss the incident. Once again, I feel like Mr. Manus should have taken something away from this incident.
Huh. Peculiar.
Peculiar. Well, moving on.
Isn't that interesting?
When Kevin started working on the box, he decided not to refinish it, but instead just clean it up. He was getting it ready to give to his mother as a birthday gift.
Happy birthday.
His mother came to the shop so the two could go out for lunch, at which point he gave her the box. When Kevin left briefly to make a phone call, an employee came to him saying something was wrong with his mother. He returned to his mom and found her sitting in a chair, expressionless, tears streaming down her face, and yet totally unresponsive. She was rushed to the hospital. She had had a stroke and lost her ability to speak for a time. During this time, she could only speak using a spell board on which she would point to letters and spell out words. When he asked her how she was doing, she spelled out, "No gift." When he said he had indeed given her a gift, she emphasized, "Hate gift." Jennifer.
Yes, my love.
I feel like this time, for sure, there should have been some sort of takeaway, some sort of something clicking into place.
Some kind of giant billboard flashing in front of him.
Didn't happen that way. Guess what happens next? He then gave the box to his sister. But she too soon complained that there was some inexplicable feeling of dread around it, and she claimed that the doors would open on its own. She also spoke of having vivid nightmares of a scary old lady, and she gave the box back after a few days. So after all this, what would you do?
Nuke it from space. It's the only way to be sure.
Mr. Manus gave it to his brother and his brother's wife, who kept it for 3 days and then returned it.
Did they keep the receipt?
The brother said it smelled like jasmine flowers, and his wife said it smelled of cat urine.
There's a lot of wrong with this story.
Right. Surely at this point, he's made a connection. He has realized that all of these horrible things seem to be connected to the box.
And that he keeps inflicting it on people, loved ones.
Well, not yet. Because this time, he offered it to his girlfriend.
Did he like her?
That is the most convoluted way to break up with somebody. Give them a cursed object. His girlfriend soon asked him to sell it for her. So he sold it to a middle-aged couple and 3 days later found the box sitting in front of his shop with a note on it. The note read, "This has a bad darkness."
Yeah, you think?
So, Manus finally destroyed it? No, my friend. Manus decided that until he knew what to do, he would put it in his home, in the basement.
At least he didn't decide to give it to the kindergarten class down the street.
Right.
At the very least.
That evening, Manus experienced what he claimed to be the worst nightmares he ever had, in which he was stalked and attacked by a hunched-over old hag. These nightmares plagued him for weeks and were even said to invade the sleep of people who stayed over. Even more horrifying, he claimed that upon waking, he would sometimes find scratches, bite marks, and bruises on his body. To quote Manus, "In the dream, I find myself walking with a friend, usually someone I know well and trust at some point. I find myself looking into the eyes of the person that I'm with. It is then that I realize that there is something different, something evil looking back at me. At that point in my dream, the person I am with changes into what can only be described as the most gruesome, demonic-looking hag I have ever seen. This hag proceeds then to beat the living tar out of me." In addition to the nightmares, Kevin claims that he began to see indistinct, shadowy figures lurking about his home, often out of the corner of his eye. Guests reported the same. So, as any fine American would do, Manus decided to
take it on a road trip? Run it over in his driveway, set it on fire.
Sell it on eBay.
Of course.
A buyer named Josef Netsky purchased it in 2003. For the price of $140, he got the box, its creepy contents, and apparently the evil spirit inhabiting it as well.
Bargain.
Almost immediately after buying the cabinet, Josef purportedly was plagued by all manner of weirdness. Electronics in his house would malfunction or simply cease to work. Lights would turn on and off by themselves, and objects would be misplaced and moved around, even when no one else was around. Strange smells would appear and disappear abruptly, and blurry spectral figures roamed about. He also claimed that his hair began to fall out, and that he had a sudden insect infestation in his home that came from seemingly nowhere. So what did Josef do?
He decided to eat it.
He put the box on eBay.
It would have been a good source of fiber.
It was then purchased by a university museum curator and collector, Jason Haxton. Haxton reported that he began to have a myriad of health problems shortly after acquiring the box, such as inexplicable welts, rashes, and hives upon his body, constant coughing, fatigue, a metallic taste in his mouth.
Ask your doctor if Dibbuk Box is right for you.
Persistent nasal problems, and even coughing up blood for no reason.
I think there's a reason.
He also says that his home had frequent phantom scents, such as, take a wild guess.
Jasmine cat urine?
You got it.
I love the independent confirmation. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Oddly, despite all this, he has also said that he believes the box reverses the aging process.
What? Where did that come from?
The old 103-year-old woman was actually 564.
She had finally just had enough. Just take it.
Intrigued by the phenomena, Haxton then had it looked at by a specialist on Jewish artifacts named Rebecca Edry, who determined it to be a sacred relic for imprisoning a spirit. She is quoted as saying, "The two doors on the outside open up just like a holy closet or Aaron HaKodesh, a receptacle for Torah scrolls. And I saw round metal hoops on the inside of the doors that would hold scrolls. This particular size is used when going to comfort the family of the deceased. This, the insertion of the spirit, was done deliberately for a specific purpose." Haxton then approached Jewish rabbis and mystics to have rituals done on the box to seal its malicious spirit, after which he hid it away in the hope that it would never bother anyone again. But the box did change owners again. And who owns it? Ghost Adventures actor Zach Baggins bought the box for allegedly tens of thousands of dollars, and it is showcased in his haunted museum in Las Vegas, but will not display it openly. You need to be over 18 and sign a waiver to view it. So what do you think? Is the waiver legal protection against visitors getting cursed, or from a visitor's sudden and uncontrollable violence against Mr. Baggins while in his company?
You could definitely blame the box, right?
When we return, we'll discuss sinister paintings that bring new meaning to bad art.
Bad art. Bad art. No killing. No.
Plus, an oldie but a goodie. Meet the ring that is blamed for the death of a Hollywood legend and countless others.
You're listening to Odd Tonic. Don't wander away, no matter how sweet the sirens call.
Thanks again for listening to Odd Tonic. We love having you with us in the parlor.
If you're enjoying your eerie visit with us tonight, please subscribe on your favorite app.
And visit our Facebook page this week for a scarily enticing giveaway. Jennifer created a very special and very Odd Tonic-styled keepsake for a few lucky winners.
Yes.
To enter the giveaway, write a review for Odd Tonic on iTunes or your favorite podcast app, take a screenshot of it, and send it to us on Facebook or at our email, theparlor@oddtonicsociety.com.
That's all you have to do. Winners will be selected 1 week from the post date of this episode, so head over to our Facebook page to check out an image of the giveaway prize and for more details at Odd Tonic Society. And now, back to more confounded curses.
And we're back. So far in this episode, we've covered a runestone that must never be moved, a chair that must never be sat in, and a tomb that should never be opened.
For once, I'd like a curse that doesn't force you to not do something. We need more curses that make you do nice things for yourself.
Yeah.
Take a nap, have a piece of chocolate, treat yourself. Some kind of cruel supernatural punishment for neglecting self-care.
That, darling, is $1 million idea. Be kind to yourself or else. Ironically, it was getting a little something for yourself that began the next woeful tale. But again, if the curse rules were followed, many would have been saved. The abominable jinx of
Valentino's ring. In the world of silent movie Hollywood, Rudolph Valentino was one of the greatest stars of all time. His full name was Rodolfo Alfonso Raffaello Pierre Filbert Guglielmini de Valentina de Antongoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. His life was a charmed one until it became a cursed one. He landed his first movie role in 1921, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and women worldwide were quickly taken by his sexy and captivating eyes. This A-list actor was in demand with studios, producers, and theater audiences. He found himself in a bit of trouble after getting involved with a New York socialite, Bianca de Sales. She suffered a scandalous divorce, and her wealthy husband had Valentino arrested on vice charges. Valentino managed to slip out of those allegations, but he wasn't going to stay in New York to see what more was thrown his way. He fled to the West Coast and started over in San Francisco. Passing a jewelry store one day, he noticed an unusual ring in the window. Reminds me of Little Shop of Horrors. Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice that strange and interesting plant. What is it?
Dadu.
The shop owner warned that the ring, which was a large tiger's eye gem embedded in silver, was cursed. Though indeed it was a lovely and unusual piece of jewelry, the ring had brought bad luck to anyone who had previously owned it.
Well, I certainly hope it was marked down.
You would think. The ring was even named the Destiny Ring. Regardless, not believing in such nonsense, Valentino bought the ring and wore it home. Dead. Just kidding. I love morbid humor. Legend says immediately after buying it, Valentino showed the ring to a close friend, and his friend said he saw a vision of Valentino pale and deathly ill. A vision thick with portent that came to dire fruition. As said before, Valentino was a sensation of silent film. This all changed after the purchase of the ring. He starred in the leading role of The Young Raja, a film about a young man raised in the American South who discovers he is an Indian prince whose throne was taken by usurpers. Just before the release of the film, Valentino would marry Natasha Rambova, the film's costume designer. Unfortunately, the divorce from his first wife was not yet resolved. At the time, it was required for you to wait a full year before remarrying. He was arrested on charges of bigamy and thrown in jail. The studio refused to post his bail. Instead, he had to rely on a group of friends to bail him out. Released from the shackles of jail, Valentino was free to uninhibitedly experience the utter rejection of his film's premiere. The audience reception was terrible. The Young Raja was Valentino's first flop, and it nearly destroyed his acting career. Taking nearly 2 years, Valentino struggled to find a Hollywood studio that would take a chance on him again. During this time, a small seed of doubt crept into Valentino's mind. Maybe there was something to the curse. He stopped wearing the ring and finally landed another role. His career was back on track. Confident that his bad luck had been a fluke, he began wearing the ring during the filming of The Sheik. His career suffered again as his wife became his manager of sorts, picking parts for him that made him seem more effeminate, even though this was something he struggled against with male critics and moviegoers, as seen in 1924's Monsieur Bouquet.
Wifey wanted all the macho for herself.
While still a box office success, Valentino suffered a backlash for this change in his screen persona. In the end, his marriage failed and he separated from his wife, returning to the kind of roles that made him famous. The Eagle, 1925, featured him as a Russian soldier seeking to avenge the wrongs committed against his family by the Tsarina. The following year, Valentino made a sequel of sorts to his earlier hit, The Son of the Sheik. The silent classic, sadly, proved to be his last work. Suddenly, Valentino's health declined. He was often ill during filming, and he had to push himself to keep going. After collapsing one day on set, he was forced to address his health. The diagnosis was bleeding ulcers and acute appendicitis. He was going to need emergency surgery. The procedure was considered a routine one, but unfortunately, Valentino died a couple days later from an infection on August 23rd, 1926. His last words were, "Don't worry, Chief. I'll be all right." He was 31 years old. After his death, the ring was passed to his lover, actress Pola Negri, well-known Hollywood vamp. I love that term. Let's bring Hollywood vamp back. Resurrected even, huh?
Love it.
She immediately began wearing the ring to feel close to Valentino. Soon, however, Pola became gravely ill. Her health declined so badly she could no longer work, and her career came to an abrupt end. Recuperating from the odd illness, she met a man named Russ Colombo, who bore a striking resemblance to Valentino. Perhaps taken by Colombo's reminder of her dead lover, she gave him the ring. From one Valentino to another, she said. He felt honored to receive the ring and wore it with pride, right up to his death. He was killed in a mysterious shooting, a crime that has never been solved. The ring passed to Colombo's best friend, entertainer Joe Casino, a fine name. Joe had heard the stories about the cursed ring. He put the ring under glass rather than risk wearing it. He didn't touch it, even when a request came to donate it to a museum dedicated to Valentino relics. Eventually, though, the allure was too much. Casino developed an inkling to wear the ring, thinking it was a shame to just leave such a prize neglected. My precious.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds awfully familiar.
He wore the ring, and a week later was fatally struck by a truck.
Yow.
It even rhymes. By this time, the ring's reputation had grown. When Casino's brother Dell inherited it, he locked it away in a safe in his home. The ring was stolen by James Willis, who set off an alarm during the robbery, and when police arrived on the scene, they fired a warning shot, but the bullet hit Willis and killed him. The ring was in his pocket. It was recovered and placed back into the safe. Movie producer Edward Small approached Dell about borrowing the ring while making a movie about Valentino. Casino agreed to the loan. Jack Dunn, an unknown actor, was given the ring to wear during a film test for the role, along with some of Valentino's old costuming. 2 weeks after the screen test, Jack Dunn died of an extremely rare blood disease. He was barely 21 years old.
Whether you believe in curses or not, this is a whole lot of action surrounding this ring.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. Mm-hmm. Del Casino put the ring in a bank vault for safekeeping. Nearly a year after Dunn's death, a daring bank robbery took place at the Los Angeles bank, and the thieves escaped with more than $200,000 cash. One of the items stolen was also the ring. In the police ambush that followed, 2 of the gang were apprehended by police and 3 onlookers were injured. Alfred Hahn, the gang's leader, was convicted and sent to prison for life. He reportedly told authorities that, "If I had known what was in that bank vault, apart from the money, I would have picked myself another bank." Yeah. The ring was returned to Casino after the trial, but the whereabouts are unknown. It's presumed to be locked up somewhere, but no one has come forward to claim ownership. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. If the paintings in our next 2 stories could be dictated, you'd have stacks and stacks of paper repeating the word, run.
The Crying Boy paintings. The Crying Boy was one of a series of paintings by artist Giovanni Bragolin, completed in the 1950s. The series depicted young, often impoverished-looking, teary-eyed children. While it may seem strange to want an image of a weeping child on your wall, the pictures proved popular all over the world. In the UK alone, it sold over 50,000 prints. One boy's image, in particular, tugs on the heartstrings, his eyes a sad reflection of his soul. He became known as the Crying Boy. In total, Bragolin painted over 60 paintings, and, up until the early 80s, the prints and reprints of his images continued to be mass-produced. In 1985, a tabloid newspaper in the United Kingdom printed a story that was to cause panic and dread surrounding these paintings. The Sun published an article entitled "Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy." The story described the terrible experience of May and Ron Hall after their home was destroyed by fire. The cause of the fire was a pan that overheated and burst into flames in their kitchen. The fire spread rapidly and destroyed everything on the ground floor. Only one item remained intact, a print of the Crying Boy on their living room wall. Distraught at their loss, the devastated couple made the bizarre claim that the painting was cursed, and it, not the pan, was the cause of the fire. After that story spread, a firefighter claimed that he had attended at least 15 house fires where everything was destroyed, the exception in each house being the picture of the Crying Boy. Before long, the story gathered momentum, and a rash of fires all over the UK were blamed on the cursed child. In subsequent stories, the painting was blamed on these incidents. A lady in Surrey lost her house to a fire 6 months after buying the painting. 2 sisters in Kilburn had fires in their homes after buying a copy of their painting. One sister even claimed to have seen her painting sway backwards and forwards on the wall. A concerned lady on the Isle of Wight attempted to burn her painting without success, and then went on to suffer a run of bad luck. A gentleman in Nottingham lost his home and his family were injured. A pizza parlor in Norfolk was destroyed, including every painting on its wall, except for the crying boy. When newspapers reported that even rational firefighters refused to have a copy of the crying boy in their homes, the reputation of the painting was damned forever. Eventually, if there was an image of a crying child by any artist in a house that went on fire, the painting was blamed. Some claimed they experienced bad luck if they attempted to destroy or get rid of their paintings. Others were convinced that it was only a matter of time before disaster struck them. After printing more articles and scare stories, the Sun offered a frightened public a solution. On Halloween 1985, hundreds of the paintings were collected together by the newspaper and burnt under the supervision of the fire brigade. So why would this seemingly innocent series of paintings be cursed? One theory suggested that the little boy was a gypsy child whose family placed a curse on the artist. Some claimed that the child had died in a fire and his spirit was trapped in the painting. The most enduring story claimed the crying boy accidentally set fire to the studio of the artist who had painted him. The child's parents had also been killed in the blaze. Wherever the little orphan went, the fires mysteriously followed, earning him the nickname of Diablo, or Devil. The boy supposedly survived to early adulthood, but was tragically killed when his car crashed and burst into flames. From then on, it was his image that carried on his cursed fascination with fire. In a bid to debunk the stories that surrounded the painting of the crying boy, various experts offered their own theories. A frustrated fire brigade pointed out that in all cases where there had been fires, there was a rational explanation. The fires in almost all cases could be traced back to human carelessness or electrical faults. What they couldn't explain was the evidence that the paintings often remained intact when everything around them was destroyed. In a 2010 video made by Steve Punt and available on YouTube, a painting of The Crying Boy is set alight in a bid to decide the matter once and for all. By the time the fire burns out, the corner of the painting is scorched, but it remains largely intact, and the face remains untouched. Possibly the simplest of explanations is that the picture is printed onto fire-retardant materials. Quite simply, the manufacturer of the print created a fire-resistant product that became a victim of its own success. What do you think, dear guest? Haunted hijinks or homebred hysteria? The plot thickens as we explore another peculiar painting entitled
The Hands Resist Him. The piece was painted by artist Bill Stoneham in 1972. It depicts a young boy and a life-size female doll standing in front of a glass-paned door, against which many hands are pressed. According to Stoneham, the boy is based on a photograph of himself at age 5. The doorway is a representation of the dividing line between the waking world and the world of fantasy and impossibilities, while the doll is a guide that will escort the boy through it all. The disembodied hands represent alternate lives or possibilities. The artist says the inspiration behind the painting was his experience of being adopted and never knowing his biological siblings. Right before he created the painting, Stoneham's first wife, Rowan, had penned a poem called Hands Resist Him. At the time, the couple lived in California, and Stoneham was under contract with a gallery owner to produce 2 paintings a month. With his next deadline looming, Stoneham seized upon his wife's poem and that 20-year-old photo of himself for inspiration. Stoneham had a large gallery show put on by gallery owner Charles Feingarten. There, The Hands Resist Him was purchased by actor John Marley, famous for his role as Jack Woltz in The Godfather, the character most people remember for the scene where he wakes up to find a severed horse head in his bed. Alarmingly, a string of deaths connected to the painting happened within 6 years of each other. The first was the death of Henry Sledis in 1978, a noted art critic who wrote a piece covering the painting in the Los Angeles Times. The art gallery's owner, who contracted Stoneham to create the painting, died in 1981, and actor John Marley passed away in 1984, though he did sell the painting before he passed. The painting disappeared for 26 years after that, finally resurfacing after being abandoned behind a California brewery-turned-art space. In February 2000, the painting returned to the public eye when the owner posted it for sale on eBay. There, the eBay description made a series of claims that the painting was cursed or haunted. When we received this painting, we thought it was really good art, the eBay seller wrote. At the time, we wondered a little why a seemingly perfectly fine painting would be discarded like that. Today, we don't. One morning, our 4.5-year-old daughter claimed that the children in the picture were fighting and coming into the room during the night. The father of the young girl set up a motion-sensitive camera in her room to show his daughter there was nothing to be afraid of. Instead, he saw the boy crawl from the painting. Including with the listing were a series of photographs that were said to be evidence of the incident in which the female doll character threatened the male character with the gun she was holding, causing him to attempt to leave the painting. A disclaimer was included with the listing, absolving the seller from all liability if the painting was purchased. These details proved to be a huge draw for buyers. The eBay listing was viewed more than 30,000 times. Some of these viewers even complained to the seller about experiencing supernatural occurrences after visiting the listing. One reported hearing an exorcist-type voice, along with a blast of hot air. Another reported he became ill while viewing the painting and had to burn white sage to cleanse his house afterwards. Another reported blackout/mind control experiences. By the time the painting was sold to gallery owner Kim Smith for $1,025, its legend had spread across the internet. A month after the eBay auction ended, Smith reported, "I wish I could report a bizarre happening or mind possession type thing, but the unusual things started happening with the first email, and counting," Smith said. Prayers and quotes from scriptures from a man of faith, advice on how to cleanse my residence of this evil thing from a Native American shaman in Mississippi, reports of people being repulsed, made physically ill, or suffering from blackout mind control experiences. Smith, now 61, has been asked to show the painting 6 times. One of the most memorable occasions was in 2007, when about a dozen men ranging from age 14 to 60 came in to see it. 20 seconds passed, and just silence, Smith said. And then someone said, "That's creepy." Smith recently received a low 6-figure offer for the painting, but turned it down. "Nothing has ever been to the point where I consider serious," he said. Today, the painting rests in a storage pocket in Smith's gallery in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's still alive, so is the artist, Bill Stoneham, who created the painting. Stoneham himself does not believe the painting to be cursed. He says, "I'm sure it was a coincidence, but some of what I paint resonates with other people, opening the inner door or basement."
Great quote.
So can the collective beliefs of people create a reality of its own, effectively bringing thought to form and giving energy a life of its own? Is the power of thought a tangible one? This is a topic we plan to exquisitely explore on our next episode. In the meantime, be careful what you think.
That wraps another edition of Odd Tonic. We hope you've enjoyed some of our favorite tales of junk with juju. Remember to subscribe so you never miss a show, and leave us a review on iTunes or your favorite podcast app so that your kindred odd may find us as well.
And don't forget, leave a review and send us a screenshot.
Within 1 week of this episode posting,
We'll enter you in our special Odd Tonic giveaway. Visit our Facebook page for more details at Odd Tonic Society. We'll be back next week with more weird history, strange science, and a healthy helping of paranormal goodness.
this, dear guest, is goodbye for now. But remember, if in the middle of the night, the painting at the end of your moonlit hallway begins to shift and blur until its painted figures tumble out onto the floor and begin to slowly crawl toward you, don't worry.
It's just us.
Good night.